Hello, I'm Dr. John Kruse, and today I'm going to be talking about making anger ebb. So this is directed at understanding anger and helping you learn ways to decrease it. Although it's specifically directed at people with ADHD, it certainly has useful information for everyone else because anger is a universal and human emotion. And thanks for coming in today. I tried to run this yesterday and had some frustrating problems myself with computers, but it seems to be working now. And the talk is going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. You can certainly put in comments while you're watching or post comments later if you have specific questions you want me to answer. So again, I'm going to start with some scenarios where anger might arise. So imagine you're sheltering in place with a few roommates, and one of the roommates keeps putting dishes in the dishwasher so they're too close together, and actually one of your drinking glasses broke last week, and you've told your roommates to change their behavior, but when you go to put your own glasses in the dishwasher, you notice two other glasses are still touching each other, and you just explode at your roommate, screaming and yelling that you've told them and that they've complaining this is a trivial thing to get upset about, which part of you knows, but you can't help yourself from that screaming match. Or another example is you're trying to log into your meeting on Zoom and you did wait till the last moment and you're rushing and you can't get the password to work properly, and then the whole system crashes, and then you wind up pounding your fist on the bed and your laptop falls to the ground and everything crashes physically and electronically and it's destroyed. Or scenario number 3, you're waiting in line at your favorite coffee joint, which is still serving people outside, and you are lined up, but you're 6 feet apart, social distancing on the sidewalk, very carefully respecting distances, and it is taking a long time because there's so many people in line ahead of you, and you're on your phone, and you get up to the front of the line, and just as you're getting up to the front of the line, some guy walking from the opposite direction walks right up to the counter because you're too busy focused with the phone, and when you realize it, you yell at him, "Hey, what the F are you doing?" And he yells back, and you get into an argument, and the barista doesn't want to get involved at all, and the person behind you then walks right in and gets served because you two are fighting over there in anger. So people with ADHD are more prone to having anger outbursts. That's something measurably we've seen. And they're not only more prone to being angry themselves, they are more prone to be on the receiving end of their anger. And there's at least 4 different reasons for that. So one is inattention. People with ADD may not be paying attention to all the social cues around them. You might not be, you might be engrossed on your phone when you should be moving promptly to the beginning of the line. You might be bumping into someone when you're wearing a mask or they're not wearing a mask, so inattention can lead to conflict. Impulsivity, so blurting things out before you know what the full story is, or blurting things out even if you're correct and right, but it may not be wise to do that in that moment. Having less control over when things boil out is a part of ADHD. For most people with ADHD, there's certainly some people with inattentive ADD where that's not an issue, but for the majority of people it is. Third point is poor time management. So if you don't leave enough time for things, you're going to often be late, you're often going to be rushing, you're often going to have less time to adjust peacefully to minor additional delays or problems around you if you're in a hurry. And then the 4th one is more directly relevant, that in ADHD, separate a bit from impulsivity, there's measurable emotional dysregulation. So emotions come up more strongly, they come up more quickly, and that certainly can be a predisposing factor for anger outbursts and episodes. So anger is one of our basic emotions. It's something found in all societies, and it has a specific trigger, which we'll get to in a minute, which brings it on, like all basic emotions do. Separate from just those central feeling inside of feeling angry or irate. There is a set of facial expressions that are special to it, and particularly flaring of the nostrils, snarling of the upper lip are classic facial expression signs of anger. And there's an action tendency, and part of what the body wants to do is get louder and move forward to get into people's faces. So there's actually preferential blood flow to those bigger muscles. Again, it doesn't force you to shout, it doesn't force you to get in someone's face or lean in, but it increases the tendency that you're likely to do that. And one thing to point out that often we view sort of all anger as bad or wrong or evil. I mean, again, it is a basic emotion. It is going to be triggered by things in our environment. But more importantly, it's actually one of the few empowering emotions. Many of our other emotions make us shut down, withdraw, get further back from a situation. Anger is one that leads people lean in and evoke changes. So, if there weren't enough angry people, women wouldn't have ever gotten the right to vote. Slavery in our country would not have been abolished if there weren't enough angry people about the situation, both black and white, that took action to change it. HIV treatments would have taken much longer to develop or to get to people's hands if ACT UP hadn't been an angry organization demanding change in how our FDA allowed access to medications. So again, anger can be a positive emotion if it's channeled and used appropriately. And one other reason for not sort of getting too down on yourself if anger does come up is to remember that anger and other basic emotions happen faster than conscious thought. So there are fewer neural connections, there are shorter pathways to trigger an emotional outburst than there are cognitive pathways to calmly process a situation and decide that you don't want to have an emotional outburst. So getting back to for each basic emotion, there's a specific trigger for it. And this may sound weird to lots of people, but the more you think about it, this is, I would argue, both true and useful information. The trigger for anger is perceiving that a situation is unfair and that you can't do much about it. So people saying, with one of the examples I've listed above, or with road rage is a classic example. And there's nothing unfair about it. That guy's just driving like a jerk, so I should be angry and upset at him. And the issue there is that not that he's just a jerk, because there's lots of jerks around all the time that we're not getting angry at. Your anger is being triggered because his driving like a jerk is threatening your safety or your peace of mind, and that is basically unfair to you, and fundamentally, you can't do much about how he's driving. So that again is the trigger for anger, a situation that's unfair and that you can't do much about in the moment. So that's what anger is about. How do you deal with it? So one of the approaches, and this is difficult because anger can be such a strong and powerful emotion, but as we talked about last time with shame, working against those action tendencies is an effective way to quell an emotion. So again, with anger, it's making you shout, it's making you lean in. One way of working against those action tendencies is to sit down and whisper. And I'm not saying it's impossible to be angry when you're whispering, but it's a heck of a lot harder. And it's a heck of a lot harder if you're sitting down to get in someone's face. So those are two of the immediate issues in terms of ways of dealing or trying to get out of an angry situation or dampen down the anger. At a much more basic level, the most anger management courses are about being aware of lower levels of anger, irritation, frustration. All those are in the anger family before they rise to a crescendo. So getting back to it, my example about the loading things in the dishwasher, I mean, it sounds like the person in the anecdote actually did try to, they were aware that it was annoying to them, so they spoke to their roommates. They tried to defuse the situation. They tried to deal with their own anger when it was a lower level, and it was just that it persisted and persisted till it got big enough and blew up that it wasn't helpful. Some of the helpful ways of knowing in yourself that you're getting angry, I mean, one is what I said a few sentences back. If you're thinking someone else is acting like a jerk, again, almost always that is an angry framing, an angry. So watching your own mental processes and assessments of situations. Another tool that most anger management courses teach people is to practice assessing your own body. So if you feel your body tension increasing when you see a certain person or a certain incident, or you're feeling tension in your jaw, you're feeling, many people say it feels like my blood pressure is going up. Those are all signs to you that you're being angry, and again, it would be useful to figure out what aspect of the situation is feeling unfair to you. Are there ways you can decrease, change that situation, get out of that situation so it's not affecting you, or speak up while you're less angry, and you can do it in a civil tone to try to change the other person's behavior or actions. So a third angle or approach to reducing anger, and this is more directed at just the subset of people with ADHD, is to make sure you're taking your medications. Now, often people associate, oh, stimulants make people riled up, they make them angry, they make them aggressive, and measurably research groups that have looked at emotional dysregulation in people with ADHD, and again, particularly people with hyperactive ADHD, have found that a given dosage of a stimulant, if it's helpful with focusing and helpful with attention and helpful with the cognitive aspects of ADHD, is extremely likely also to be helping with emotional dysregulation. So actually taking your stimulant medications is a good thing to do, and making sure they are adjusted to the right level. So there was another set of studies more recently looking at people who are already with ADHD on stimulant medications and being too angry, aggressive, anger and aggressive. And what they found is that for the vast majority, and it was something like 80% of them, simply making adjustments in medications. And if you are continually feeling revved up, feeling anxious, feeling irritable on your stimulant medication, that's a sign that it's too much. But it's often just backing down. So it's helping with focus, it's helping you pick up on social cues, it's helping you be a little more patient. It's going to be more effective than just throwing out the medication completely. So a longer term solution, and it's along with anger management approaches, so not as useful in the exact moment, is again, getting back to what's triggered, is that something unfair that you can't do much about is whatever is triggering your anger outburst. And if you are perceiving unfairness, it's almost always that is a true and real and valid way of assessing a situation. So very seldom are you going to get out of the situation by deciding, oh no, that guy driving out there, cutting people off and going too fast, riding up on their bumpers, oh, that's fair that they're doing that. It's not fair. So how do we get out of anger? We get out of anger by knowing that any situation we are ever faced with or ever immersed in has hundreds of different aspects to it, hundreds of different true perspectives as ways to see it. And it's only when you make the unfairness the most important aspect of the situation that you're going to get angry. So for example, the best example is everyone else on the highway at the same time isn't getting angry at this guy who's driving like a jerk. Some are ignoring it completely, some are laughing at it, some are feeling sad that someone is driving so poorly. So when you look at the situation that's making you angry, when you're aware that there's unfairness, it's important to look at how else can I reframe it for myself. And with the road rage and driving, the simple answers are, if you focus on, I'm doing what I can to be a safe and responsible and respectful driver, then again, you're not going to feel angry. It's only when you veer back towards, but he's acting like a jerk. Again, it's when you've made he's acting like a jerk too important. If you make it, wait a minute, yes, he can be a jerk, but I'm behaving in a way that's safe and respectful. Or, you can even make it more specific. I can specifically switch lanes or get out of his way so that I am not, he doesn't even have to enter my consciousness anymore. Or with our other examples, there again, unfairness was there, and in all of them, it's real, it's valid, but there are hundreds of other aspects of the situation that you can focus on, and you get the choice to make it what's important. And that, in therapy with many people over the years, is one of the hardest points to register, because people often feel, no, the situation dictates how I have to feel. It is most important that this guy's being a jerk. And I would say it may feel that that is intrinsically the most important aspect, but that is actually a choice you are making. And once you understand it's a choice, then you have the choice to make something else more important. So that's all focused on acute episodes of anxiety, or not anxiety, sorry, of anger. And one of the things many people are experiencing with sheltering in place and the coronavirus is that they are much more angry or irritable overall than they usually are at their baseline. And if there is pervasive anger going on in your life, then you need to search for pervasive things that are unfair, because that's probably the driving force of what's going on. And right now, for the coronavirus, I would argue the coronavirus right now, it is unfair that that is something in our lives we have to deal with. None of us asked for it. It's not a good force in any of our lives, maybe for Jeff Bezos at Amazon, but I'm being flippant there. It's clearly bad. It's clearly not asked for any of us. It's clearly not anything any one of us can make go away or make everything safe. So acknowledging the unfairness of the coronavirus is a way of, again, okay, that's unfair, and I will do what I can do to be safe, or I will do what I can do to protect my community, or I will do what I can do to work for cures for the economic problems, or if you're a medical researcher to find medical cures for it, or as a writer to find ways to help people find other truths, other beauties, other goodnesses in the world right now. So with the coronavirus, the pandemic itself is unfair. For other people, what's unfair to them about that is how our president is responding to it. And again, measurably, he's responding worse than the Germans did, or the Singaporeans, or the South Koreans, or again, all of them are dealing with a difficult situation, but measurably, and I would argue it's largely through his ADHD, he avoided planning at the beginning, he's avoided dealing with the situation effectively, and that's unfair. We are living with the blowback from that, and we will continue to. Other aspects of unfairness with the coronavirus is sheltering in place. You may feel that you didn't choose to be sheltering in place with the people you're stuck with, or you may be focused on that you're all alone and you didn't choose or you didn't want to be sheltering in place all alone. Again, that may be true, that might be valid, but it's only when you make that most important that it sort of poisons your mind with ongoing resentment, irritation, frustration, anger. So if you decide, yeah, I wouldn't have chosen these people to be sheltering with, but I'm glad that I have my health right now. I may have continue to be able to do my job right now, that my loved ones are still alive and healthy. Those may be the important things or the things you choose to make important, so you get less chronically angry about the unfairness of what's going on. And one other issue about unfairness, we talked about the shame connected with ADHD last week, and this ties in with it. Having ADHD, again, it has benefits, it has downsides, it makes you whoever you are as a unique individual, but there's an unfairness to that. It's not a condition you asked for, it's not one, maybe you would have chosen it again and given that choice, but maybe you wouldn't. But no one's ever going to give you that choice. So it is an unfairness that you may have to deal with it. Also, an aspect of the unfairness is maybe not the condition itself, but it's unfair how people treat those with it or pejoritize or stigmatize. That again is a true and valid and real aspect of it. But if you focus on other aspects of, again, this is part of what gives me my creativity, or this is part of what gives me my enthusiasm in certain situations, or that's part of what likes me to take risks that others might not be taking, then you're going to be less mired in the unfairness of it and winding up less angry. So I'm not even sure if anyone's watching live right now. If they are, this is your chance to ask questions. I will wait around for another 30 seconds or so. While I'm waiting, the topic next week is going to be on fear and anxiety, because that seems so pervasive in our time of coronavirus. And I probably will be we touched on sleep when we touched on scheduling, but that also seems to be a pervasive and important topic. And one last time filler is I will keep showing my book. So if you have time and you don't know what to do with it during sheltering in place, the book is there. It's available as a electronic book. It's also available as a audiobook on Amazon and many independent sources as well. So I am not seeing any questions coming in. Again, you can post them later on this post on Facebook, and I will try to answer them. And I will be back next week, back to Friday at 11, and I hope I don't have any further technical difficulties. So thanks for being here, and take care of yourself and take care of your loved ones, and stay safe and sane. Bye for now.